Hello, my name is Morgan Emmert. I will be talking with you today about healthy sexual boundaries and the different categories of these behaviors. This training is not intended to discuss what behaviors are good and what behaviors are bad. Rather, the purpose is to talk about how to respond to these different behaviors. If there is anything we discuss in this presentation that makes you uncomfortable, please consult with your foster care specialist. Through this training, you will increase your comfort in talking about sex and sexuality. You will learn the essential relationship skills to increase sense of safety in discussing sex and sexuality. You will demonstrate how to talk to children about the types of touch, and you will create a plan of how your home will encourage healthy boundaries and sexual development. Fact or myth? Number 1. Most behaviors related to sex and sexuality are concerning. This is a myth. Most behaviors related to sex and sexuality are actually natural and healthy. Engaging in these behaviors is a normal part of self and other exploration. Sexuality really starts at birth. There are behaviors that 0 to 4-year-olds engage in that are related to sexuality that we as caregivers may not even realize. Number 2. A supportive relationship with an adult decreases adolescent sexual risk behaviors. This is a fact. A supportive relationship enhances communication about sexual behaviors, as well as increases youth acceptance of caregiver monitoring and supervision. Communication, monitoring, and supervision are all key to decreasing these sexual risk behaviors. Number 3. A child who engages in inappropriate sexual behavior was sexually abused. This is a myth. The most significant common factor among children who engage in inappropriate sexual behavior is really a chaotic, stressful, or unpredictable upbringing. While it may be possible that they were sexually abused if they're engaging in some of these inappropriate behaviors, it does not mean that they were absolutely sexually abused. It's up to professionals that specialize in sexual abuse to determine the cause. And number 4, children are exposed to messages about sex and sexuality on a daily basis. As I'm sure most of you have said in your heads, this is a fact. Children are bombarded with messages about sex and sexuality that are verbal, nonverbal, intentional, and unintentional. Examples of these daily messages could be their clothing, the language, just simply being able to say no, gender identity stereotypes. So what this means is that we don't actually have to be talking about the birds and the bees to be talking about healthy sexual behavior. When we teach children problem solving, impulse control, emotional regulation, or frustration tolerance, we are actually teaching them healthy sexual behavior. As I mentioned in the first slide, we will be talking about 3 different groups of behaviors. This first group is the natural and exploratory behaviors. These behaviors are expected, and they are an information gathering process. They are done with children of the same age, size, and developmental status. They are mutual, lighthearted, and spontaneous with youth that have an ongoing relationship. These last 2 points are really important. If a child is doing a behavior with a child that is also of the same age, it's mutual. This is when it's natural and exploratory. However, if you have a 7-year-old that's trying to tell dirty jokes to a 2-year-old, and 2-year-old's not so into hearing these jokes, that's when it moves from these natural and exploratory behaviors to one of the other categories that we will talk about. When a child is engaging in these natural and exploratory behaviors, when they are caught by adults, the behavior diminishes, or at least it does in the presence of adults. Their interest in sexual activity is balanced with other interests, so they may also be interested in music or sports. These behaviors may still make some of us uncomfortable, even though we know they are natural behaviors, and that's okay. Some examples of these natural and exploratory behaviors. So kiddos 0 to 4, they may be interested in their own feces. They may like to take advantage of opportunities to look at nude people and watch bathroom functions. Our school-age kiddos, or those 5 to 8, They may inspect another child's body while playing doctor. They may draw genitals on human figures for artistic expression or simply because the figure is in the nude. And they may touch or rub their own genitals when going to sleep, when they are tense or afraid, or simply because it feels good. For children 9 to 12, this is when they may do the "you show me yours and I'll show you mine." They may have occasional masturbation without penetration. And for our teens, those 13 to 18, they may tell obscenities and jokes within cultural norms, or they may have monogamous intercourse. It is important to note that moral, social, or familial rules may restrict intercourse, but these behaviors are not abnormal, developmentally harmful, or illegal when private, consensual, equal, and non-coercive. The second group that we will talk about are these behaviors that are of concern. So these behaviors are seen in children who are overly concerned with sex and sexuality for their age or development. If the behaviors persist after intervention, that is when it is time to talk to a professional. These behaviors may include things such as kiddos 0 to 4. After having been told no consistently, they continue to touch their own genitals in public. They may smear feces on the walls and floor, or they may hump other children with clothes on. Kiddos 5 to 8, they make other people uncomfortable by repeatedly requesting to touch their genitals. Or, after having been told no consistently, they imitate sexual behavior with dolls or stuffed toys. Children 9 to 12, they may have precocious sexual knowledge. They may be preoccupied with masturbation, or they may have sexually explicit conversations with peers. And for our teens, again, those kiddos that are 13 to 18, they may have polygamous sexual intercourse. They may be sexually preoccupied or have anxiety about sex, and they may embarrass others with sexual themes. Now, these behaviors that I just mentioned, these are not exhaustive. There are many more behaviors. If you are uncomfortable with the behaviors that I just mentioned, or have other behaviors that you think may fall into this category, please talk with your foster care specialist. So behaviors that require professional consultation. These behaviors often indicate a child is deeply confused about sex or sexuality. Consultation with a professional is mandatory, so these behaviors are even more intense than those that we just discussed. These behaviors may include things such as kiddos 0 to 4. They sneakily touch or rub genitals of adults or children, and when they are caught, they will deny it. They may have precocious sexual knowledge. They may have oral genital contact. They may have simulated or real intercourse without clothes. For children 5 to 8, after negative consequences, they may continue to use dirty language or make sexual sounds. They may force another child to take their clothes off, engage in any sexual conduct, or show genital, breasts, or buttocks. Or they may have sex talk that is habitual, repeated, and has caused problems. For children 9 to 12, some behaviors they may exhibit are sexually explicit conversations with significant age difference, masturbation, which includes vaginal or anal penetration, compulsive masturbation, or sexually explicit proposals or threats, including written notes. And finally, for our teenagers, those 13 to 18, some behaviors they may exhibit: attempting to expose others' genitals, sexual contact with significant age difference, forced sexual contact or penetration, sexual contact with animals, or compulsive masturbation. So again, this list is not exhaustive. There are many other behaviors that fall under this professional consultation category. If you have additional questions about other behaviors that may be in this category, please consult with your foster care specialist. After hearing several of the behaviors that I listed off in the last few slides, several of you may be feeling pretty uncomfortable. And that is okay. It is good to acknowledge what is going on inside of ourselves, because the first part of radar is to recognize what is going on in the situation or a relationship and assess ourselves first. This is very important in order to not react out of our emotions, but to choose a response that can help youth trust us and feel safe in our home. This radar that we will talk about, it promotes healthy relationships. It promotes safe relationships. And in order to do this, we have to have our radar on at all times in our home. These safe relationships in calm households allow children to learn the meaning of love, caring, and affection. This quote by Gounod, "I possess tremendous power to make an individual's life miserable or joyous." This is really important to remember. Based on the way that you respond to something that happens in your home, you can either make the child feel miserable and unsafe, or you can make them feel joyous and safe. You really want to make sure you're choosing responses that help them feel safe in your house. We will use this radar to talk about how to respond to different behaviors that may occur. Radar is an acronym. So the first R, recognize. You want to recognize that something is going on by using all of your senses. So again, this could be something's going on in the environment or something is going on in a relationship. But you want to recognize that something is happening. The second word, assess. You want to assess yourself first because you are the only person you can change. So assess your emotional, your physiological state, the relationship with the person. Do you need help? Once you have assessed yourself, you can assess the other person. What are their needs? Are they being met? Do they have a past history? What is causing the person to behave in this manner? Once you have assessed both yourself and the other person, you can move on to deciding. You want to decide what to do. So taking all of the information you have gathered in your assessment, use your critical thinking skills to respond in a helpful way. Once you have decided how to respond, you will act on that decision. So this is a verbal response. It is not a reaction. It is a general or specific physical response. So again, you want to make sure you're responding to a situation. You are not reacting to it. And finally, you'll review the results. Did you achieve the goals of your actions? If not, what is your next step? Do you maybe need to try something different? All of us can help others. However, the most effective way to help others is to reflect on healthy responses when we feel stressed, uncomfortable, embarrassed, or angry. Responding in a way that promotes healthy relationships will help us build trust with people we are serving or interacting with, whereas a reaction out of emotion, fear, embarrassment, or anger could actually harm the relationship and cause people not to feel safe with us. Caregivers should do their best to respond and not react to behaviors and actions. This can be hard if you've never used this model before. Practice this with your foster care specialist, spouse, significant other, or family member so that when you need to use this, you'll be ready and feel confident. Supporting people, so building those supportive relationships. You want to make sure that you're not viewing emotions as a weakness. It's okay to be sad, mad, frustrated, happy, whatever emotion it is that someone is feeling. But you want to make sure that people are expressing those emotions in a healthy way. That's something that you as a caregiver can role model. How do you express anger? How do you express happiness? Whenever you do or say something, do or say it in a way that builds people up. Do not repress or destroy emotions. So again, keeping in mind, it's okay to be sad or mad or happy. It takes time to build trust. Practice forgiveness. Sometimes we don't use our radar as well as we should have. And that's okay to say, look, I'm sorry. I reacted. I should not have said that. I should not have reacted in that way. I'm sorry. Will you forgive me? And role model that. Help children understand that it's okay to say I'm sorry and to ask for forgiveness. And choose new behaviors. What are some behaviors that you can choose that will build up relationships? And finally, practice empathy. We may not understand what someone is going through, but we can all understand the emotions that they're feeling. We all know what it's like to feel mad or sad or happy. So if you can empathize with the emotion that that person is feeling, you can work on building a relationship with them. All of these points are very important when creating an environment in your home that leads a youth to feel, in this place and with these people, I feel safe. So responding to behaviors. We're going to talk first about how to respond to these natural and exploratory behaviors. First, you want to normalize their exploration. Teach the child what they need to know based on the situation. And restate that you are there to listen and to answer any questions they may have. It is important not to laugh or judge the child for asking the questions they may have. Thinking about radar, you want to ensure you are responding to the child's question and not reacting to it. Remember, there are many behaviors that may make some of us uncomfortable, even for those that are natural and exploratory. The key to responding is recognizing that we are uncomfortable and finding a response that allows them to be curious. Some suggested responses to those natural behaviors might be, the human body is super cool, and there is so much to notice. You have a lot of questions. What is it that you are most curious about? You made a good choice touching your penis, vagina, or anus in your bedroom. When responding to behaviors that are of concern, you want to make sure the home feels safe for everyone. You may need to provide supervision when other vulnerable people are in the home, and these vulnerable people may be both adults or children. You may need separate bedrooms and beds, even for adults. And you may need to use motion detectors, buzzers, or sound monitors to further monitor movement during the sleeping hours. Youth with concerning behavior should not be left in charge of other youth. Bathing and toileting should be done separately from other youth and adults, and you may need to ensure that there are locks on the door. Everyone is fully clothed while in common areas of the house. Frequently and privately, ask other youth in the home if the youth with concerning behavior has tried anything with them. You want to watch other youth for changes in their demeanor when the youth with concerning behaviors is present. You want to inform other adults who care for the youth about their sexual behavior and necessary steps to ensure their safety. And finally, you want to have clear and consistent expectations about acceptable behaviors in your home. You should also do self-reflection. Is your home calm and predictable? Are you modeling healthy sexual behavior? These behaviors may evoke uncomfortable feelings in yourself. Recognize that. Remember radar. Recognize how you feel first. Then make a decision on how to respond that does not involve reacting. If I have a child that is 13 years old in my home that is showing an interest in pornography, my initial reaction might be to lock up all internet access. I need to recognize my level of comfortability and my initial reaction. Next, I need to assess the situation. I know the child watched pornography while living with his biological parents. He may be trying to feel closer to home. Now that I have reminded myself of this, I can appropriately choose a response. I've decided to remind him of our previous conversations regarding pornography. We've talked about this. What do you remember from our last conversation? I might ask him. The child will respond significantly better to this conversation, rather than me yelling and hastily taking away all internet access. While the internet access should absolutely be supervised, there should be a point of conversation to allow the child to continue feeling safe in my home. This can encourage an open conversation and will help create or build upon the trust he may have with me and me with him. Other suggested responses to these of concerning behaviors may include, you talk a lot about sex and sexuality. What else are you interested in? As a caregiver, you can also model appropriate play with their toys, animals, or other objects. You may say things like, Watch how I play with my doll. Can you play with your doll nicely too? Or, you did a great job playing nicely with your doll. I love that your doll respected the space of your other doll. When you've had these concerning behaviors, when do you consult with a professional? If you are already working with a helping professional, inform them promptly. If not, ensure a therapist with experience in addressing these sexual behaviors in youth is contacted. Consultation should start with a behavioral plan, or a plan designed to eliminate behavior of concern. You want to make sure that you are becoming an advocate for the child. Finally, responding to our last set of behaviors, those mandatory professional consultation behaviors. The response is consistent with those that are concerning and more intense. Professional consultation is mandatory with these behaviors. There may be legal involvement as well, and the child may be more difficult to maintain in a home setting. The greatest barrier to this is the caregiver's willingness to work through issues with the youth. Most people that have attended this training in person have strong feelings to these behaviors. These behaviors are intense. If I have a child in my home that is 7 years old and is making sexual threats, my first initial reaction is to yell and demand that the child leaves immediately. Once I recognize that this behavior has evoked this feeling in me, I need to take a step back while ensuring the safety of everyone in the home. I have assessed the situation and have reminded myself the child grew up in a chaotic, stressful upbringing. Now that I have taken a few deep breaths, I am able to make a decision on how I will respond. I have decided to respond in a way that promotes the safety of everyone in the home and acted in that manner. It is important everyone, including you, is safe. Let's talk with someone else that can help address this, I might say to the child. I will receive a better response to the statement and point of dialogue versus my initial yelling reaction. If I were to yell at the child, this does not show that I can keep them safe and respond safely 100% of the time. A yelling reaction hurts any trust that we may have built. Other suggested responses to these intense behaviors. The things that you are doing to others are against the law. You need to get help, or I'm afraid you'll end up in jail. Or, I can tell from the things that you're doing that you're really confused about sex and sexuality. Do you want to help me find someone you can sort things out with, or can I pick someone out for you? Now that we have talked about how to respond to these different behaviors that may occur in your home, we need to talk about how we raise sexually healthy and responsible youth. So this really starts at home, and it starts early. So you want to make sure you're creating a sexually healthy environment and you're enforcing healthy boundaries. And these boundaries may be emotional, they're sexual, and they're physical. When creating a healthy sexual environment in your house, you want to make sure you're avoiding media with sexually explicit content. This is not just pornography. You want to ensure that you're avoiding media with aggression, violence, or destruction. Our brains respond to images of violence with distress. If you remember from our fact or myth section, the largest predictor of sexually inappropriate behavior is a stressful, chaotic, or unpredictable environment. When our brains see violence, they become distressed and increase the risk of inappropriate sexual behavior. It is important to remember that this is a correlation, meaning it is something that happens enough for scientists to say that they are related, but it is not a connection 100% of the time. You want to make sure that the children do not have unsupervised or unlimited internet access. Devices like computers should be kept in common areas of the house so that caregivers can constantly monitor what children are doing on the internet. And you want to refrain from jokes about sex, innuendos, or remarks while in front of the children. When talking about avoiding media with aggression, violence, or destruction, do you know what the ratings are on the video games or the movies that your children are taking in? For video game ratings, there are 6 different ratings. The first one, C, that is the early childhood. Second one, E, stands for everyone. Third one, everyone 10 and up. Teen ratings, mature 17 and up, or adults only 18 and up. The ratings will also give a content description so that parents can monitor the content that their children are taking in. The individual rating can be found on the front of the game, while the content description can be found on the back. For movie ratings, parents should be paying attention to the ratings as well as the content description to determine if movies are appropriate for the children in their home. Ratings as well as content description can be found on the back of the movie. The first one, G, this stands for general audiences. Content would not offend parents when children are viewing these movies. The second one, parental guidance suggested, or PG. Parents are urged to give parental guidance. These movies may contain content that some parents may not want their children exposed to. Parents should pay attention to the content description to determine if the movie is appropriate for their child or children. The third one, PG-13, or parents strongly cautioned. Parents are urged to be cautious with these ratings. Some material may not be appropriate for pre-teenagers. The fourth one is R, or restricted. These movies may contain some adult material, and parents are strongly encouraged to learn about the film before taking their children with. And finally, the last one, NC-17. No one 17 or under is admitted. These movies are clearly adult, and children are not admitted to them at the movie theaters. Now that we've talked about things to avoid when creating a healthy sexual environment, what are some things that you can do in your house? First, you want to answer questions about sex in a matter-of-fact, straightforward way that mirrors the level the question was asked. You want to ensure that you're using proper anatomical names for parts of the body. But you say, Morgan, why would I use anatomical terms? Those make me uncomfortable. Children should not be using the terms penis, or vagina, or breast. Should something happen, your children are able to clearly articulate where they were touched. If a young girl comes to school stating their babysitter touched her cookie, the school may not understand that the young girl is really referring to her vagina. It may sound uncomfortable at first. However, ensuring your children know the proper anatomical terms for their body parts ensures their safety when they are not with you. You can also help children understand that sexuality is good, but some expression is for adults only. You can help them find sexual expression that is appropriate for their age, including books about sexuality, on subjects like good touch, bad touch. And finally, you want to empower youth to make decisions about their bodies. Let them know that they can give consent. And consent can be things like, no, I don't want a hug right now. Thank you, though. Or it could be things like, this is how I'd like to cut my hair today, or these are the clothes I would like to wear. As I mentioned earlier, there are 3 different ways that you can have healthy boundaries in your house. So you want to make sure that you develop and enforce these boundaries in the home for all residents regarding the following. For physical boundaries, ensure that there's privacy in the bathroom, when dressing, and when sleeping. Objects that are not to be shared are not shared, so things like maybe a diary. The parents' fight is kept separate from children. So this is important to remember that it is not only physically in front of the children. You want to be mindful of what they can still hear, even behind closed doors. And you also want to ensure that there's age-appropriate dress and personal styling. Be a role model. If you want a certain dress in the home, ensure that you are modeling that as well. Remember, these boundaries are not just for children. These are for all residents of the home. For emotional boundaries, kids are able to keep their thoughts private. Children's information is shared with only those that need to know. This is not just for state wards. So often, parents post cute or funny photos or videos of their children on social media without stopping to ask the child how they felt about that particular photo or video. It is important to ask your child, is it okay if I post this video to Facebook so that your Aunt Betty can see it? We may think the photo is cute, however, the child may be embarrassed by it. You want to make sure that no one is ridiculed for their body, thoughts, or behavior, and that people keep their word. As we discussed earlier in the radar section, practice forgiveness. If you're unable to keep your word, tell them you're sorry. Let them know that you'll make it up to them. And finally, for sexual boundaries, genitals, breasts, and buttocks are kept private. Refraining from using sexual language in the house. As adults, we tend to believe we can talk about sex in front of children, as long as we are using innuendos. They don't understand what we are talking about, right? While the child may not fully understand, they are listening. And eventually, this will create an unhealthy sexual environment that the child is growing up in. Ensure that you're having healthy sexual expression. And finally, do not have sexual intercourse in front of children. And again, this is not just physically in front of them. Be mindful of what they can hear behind closed doors. There are guidelines based on age and gender differences between parent and child of what type of physical contact should be had. For example, not taking into account cultural norms, kissing on the mouth should be discontinued at age 5, and giving a bath should be discontinued around age 4.7. Some other examples of physical contact that can occur regardless of gender of child or parent and their ages. So you can comb, shampoo, braid their hair. Bathing younger children, again under that age 4.7. You can trim, file, paint their fingernails and toenails. Shaking hands, giving high fives, pats on the back, piggyback rides, walking while holding hands, sitting together while reading a book, or hugging. It's important to remember that you do not want to force their affection. Children should learn their body is their own, and they can protect it. Always ask children, "May I give you a hug?" If they say no, respect their decision. Consent is not just when it comes to sex. Now that you have completed this presentation, please complete a training verification form. Your code word is radar. Once you complete the training verification form, your foster care specialist will finish the presentation discussing good touch and bad touch with you in your home. They will also answer any additional questions you may have. Remember, if there was anything in the presentation that made you feel uncomfortable, recognize that. Talk with your foster care specialist about it to gain additional understanding. Again, please complete a training verification form. Your code word for this form is radar. Once you turn in that verification form, your foster care specialist can finish the presentation with you.